We're live.
All right.
Oh, sweet. You're at the fireside.
The
With-
fireside, a
Yeah.
crunchy cookie in my mouth. Just as we started.
Uh-huh. But the inimitable
Mm.
James Wooten. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we've been looking
Yeah.
forward to this one. We're pretty excited.
I'm flattered. Hopefully we can find something interesting to talk about.
Well, hopefully. I mean, we're still gunning for this Noble Oak endorsement. I don't know how many more times I should bring it up before they're like, send us a letter. We're like, we don't want to be associated.
This is very good stuff. I've had this before.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, I got it for my dad for Christmas, and we were sitting around at a poker night. And we were all sitting around, and we're like, man, our bets are stupid, but this whiskey is fantastic. You drink 2 or 3 shots, and then you're just going all in on stuff you really shouldn't. 3, 4 is all right, all in.
Pieces and inhibitions.
Yeah, yes, it does. So, well, good. So James, just tell us a little bit about yourself. You grew up in Wyoming or no?
Oh, bit all over the place. Was born in Manassas, Virginia, just south of Washington, D.C. Parents are both teachers.
Yeah.
Been in the teaching profession for a while. So was born there, moved to South Florida, Miami is what I tell people. We're actually a little bit further south than that. When I was in high school, spent that time until adulthood, growing up there. Then didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, so I joined the Marine Corps at age 19. Did 5 years there. Did a couple deployments with a couple of units, and came back, and that's a whole other thing. And I ended up deciding to get out, we'll just say, and came up here to Wyoming. Had some family up here. Didn't know what I wanted to do. We came up here, started a small business actually it was tiny, before tiny homes were popular. So designed, built, and developed one, and you actually can see it on South First in the trailer court there. It's still there. It's got the cedar siding and everything else like that. But figured that Wyoming isn't as populated as I thought it was, and didn't know it was the least populated state in the U.S. at the time. So
crap, I didn't check the population density.
Like, this just probably isn't going to work. I mean, we could have done things, I think, but ranched full time for a year, and then ended up getting into law enforcement. It's going on 8 years ago now, almost.
Wow. So you decided you wanted to wrangle miscreants rather than wrangle cows.
I still do wrangle cattle, but
okay.
The miscreants is a little bit more of a regular paycheck.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, and probably a generous term, honestly. Yeah. Suspects. Yeah.
That's what we're.
Wow. So you were enlisted in the Corps, is that right?
Right. Yep. Was enlisted. Did a little bit of college before that, and then I was just like, you know what, this isn't. We were chatting about it a little bit beforehand, but looked at architecture, looked at philosophy, and I was like, architecture, you have to do too much math.
Okay. All right.
And, philosophy, the only way you can make money with philosophy is really to teach it.
Sure.
And I was like, I don't think I want to be a teacher at that point. Now,
so you said both of your parents are teachers.
They are.
Okay. And so that experience, or their experience, you're like, no, not for me.
Oh, no, I don't know. I guess the bug hadn't gotten me yet. Cause now I teach quite a bit not in the classroom setting, but usually, but, the bug hadn't bit me yet. And I was like, I don't think I want to do that. And I don't know. I just wanted to try something a little bit different. I think, both my parents enjoyed it. My mother just got out of teaching she did over 30 years, I believe.
Wow.
And my dad's still doing it. So
okay,
it's kind of in the family.
Yeah. Right. What was would you describe your Marine Corps experience overall positive, overall neutral, overall otherwise?
It was good. I'd do it again.
Okay. All right. That was on my list of questions. Yeah. I was like, would you do it? Would you go back in?
We'll put it on that level. I mean, in retrospect, I probably should have stayed in longer, but it's a job, whether you agree with the current political climate or not, that needs to be done. You have to you need a standing military to enforce your boundaries and to have a nation. You can't just be defenseless, as it were, because then
Because then, right, very soon you're not a nation.
Exactly. Very
Right.
senior on nation. I think that's one thing that attracted me to it was, and the same reason I'm in law enforcement now is like, you have all these other jobs, but there's a few jobs that I believe are like required in order to, um, establish a functioning society with a
Mhm.
culture and everything else like
Mhm.
that. You have to have, um, uh, the threat, you have to have a law, and then obviously if you have that law, it needs to be enforced at some point
Mhm.
with force.
Right. Right.
So,
There has to be a point at which your society is willing to enforce their rules with force.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. Otherwise, then somebody else will. So, yeah.
Yeah.
No.
So, but that I think that really attracted me to it. But it was a great experience. Ended up doing 2.5 deployments. Um, I say half because one of them was called a pseudo deployment. We were doing some security stuff down in Guantanamo Bay. This was back in 2010, I believe.
Oh, geez.
Um, so yeah, I went down there we were there for about 2.5, 3 months. It was the right part of our regular rotation, and then ended up coming back. So that was a neat experience. That was a neat experience. We'd yeah.
Where were your other deployments?
After that, came back, did a short workup, then deployed over to. So the unit I was with, was called a FAST company, Fleet Anti-Terrorism
FAST company,
Security Team.
okay.
So our job is to recapture, reinforce American assets. Basically, that usually entails working with embassies. So you have your Marine Corps security guard; those guys are stationed at the embassies,
Mhm.
and we're usually an attachment to if the situation deteriorates to the point where they don't feel like they can um, keep the facility secure. So
Okay.
that was our mission set, and the way it works is we deploy to a location. Our area of operation was the Middle East,
Mm-hmm.
which is good. So we sat in a country called Bahrain.
Bahrain.
Off
Yeah.
off the coast of Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think they'd call it the Las Vegas of the Middle East, but
I just read a novel called the Peacock and the Sparrow.
mhm.
Yeah, that it was set in 2014, the Arab Spring,
Oh,
where
interesting.
basically the loss of Bahrain to Islamic fundamentalists is that pretty true to life?
I wouldn't doubt it, because when we were there, it was you would see these black flags flying in these neighborhoods, which were um, the Islamic extremists. I've been out for a little bit, so I don't want to throw out terminology I'm gonna mess up. But so we'll just say the Islamic extremists. But Bahrain, when you compare to the rest of the Middle East, was pretty liberal, even when we were there. Um, but you'd have neighborhoods with the black flags flying, and there's like that we were allowed to go out off the base. You had to
Okay.
be off. You got to have two other guys with you,
Okay.
and you had to phone call in every hour. And so, and
Wow.
you did that, but they had malls, they had movie theaters and everything else like that. And so pretty, relatively liberal considering, if you compare it to a place like Afghanistan.
Or
But
even Saudi Arabia, right? I mean, Saudi Arabia
Yeah.
culturally, the social rules are very, very strict, as I understand it.
I would think so. I haven't been there, but
Okay.
they would come to the people in Saudi Arabia would come to Bahrain to party.
Okay.
Oh,
So,
Right.
um,
Okay, that's interesting. I remember being in Dubai and having the people there tell me that Dubai is, again, they kind of threw out this term, the Vegas of the Middle East, because men and women could shop together, and husband and wife, you know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah.
Not just like
Oh.
not just boyfriend and girlfriend, right? Like men could go shopping with their wives, and and I remember thinking like, so who wanted that? It's like even in Western culture, men don't want to be dragged onto shopping trips, like this is what, like, yeah, this is how we like really loosen the rules. But yeah, no, I remember being in Dubai and people being like, "Oh yeah, the rules they're looser here," But apparently Bahrain maybe even more so.
I don't know. That'd be an interesting comparison. Like
Okay.
I've never been to Dubai,
Uh-huh.
but, and then now it sounds like I wasn't even aware in 2014 that's what the year I got out, but
Okay.
it sounds like they've had a bit of political fluctuation.
Yeah. Again, a novel, but it was written by a former CIA operative. So, so I think it was based fairly close to the truth, but I could stand to be corrected. So, okay.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we basically, we sat there and we did a couple, we did some work in, I don't think there's anything I can't say. Everything's happened. Did some stuff in Lebanon, and went over to Kuwait for some training stuff, and then did some stuff in Yemen also.
Okay.
Working with the embassy there and in Lebanon. So that was 2011, I believe. And there was a coup going on while we were there. So they sent us there, and the entire time we're there, came in, flew in, relieved us. There was a SEAL team that was there before us, relieved them. They left. We set up shop and provided security for, I think we were there about 2 to 3 months, same thing. And we got relieved by another unit, and they ended up evacuating the occupants, I think within the year after we left, just because things got out of hand. And so
this was, sorry, in Yemen?
That was in Yemen.
Okay.
Correct.
Wow.
So that was interesting. You had you'd see combat happening. We got barraged and fired at a couple times, but nothing too crazy. But we weren't the people of interest. They were interested in the current government. So you'd be watching through these thermals, and a couple kilometers off, you'd see these tanks shooting back and forth at each other, trying to. I think it was a tank. It was a ways off. Thankfully, we weren't the.
You weren't the target.
Yeah, we weren't the target. Thankfully.
That's good.
Primary target. I have a bulletin. I actually have a copy of it. It was an Al Qaeda bulletin that got published locally, and I was in it. And there's photos of us on the roof of the area that we're guarding, and there. I know it was me because it was 2 redheads. You can tell. The only other redhead in our group was our corpsman.
Right.
And so we're both standing. We're kind of, they got a side profile of us while we're watching something. I don't remember what it was, but they published that pamphlet locally, telling, like, basically encouraging people to oust the infidel.
Right.
I got a copy of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Exterminate those redheads.
Yeah, couple of redheads. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I did that, and then came back to the States. That was right after that. I think it was when the word was released that they killed Osama bin Laden.
Okay.
If my timeline's correct.
Yeah.
And so that was exciting. And then our unit we got back. I don't even remember how long after that. Then Benghazi happened. I think this is all in 2011. I could be skewing things a little bit, but our unit that basically, if you've seen the movie, was it 14 hours?
When you said
14 hours?
13 hours.
13 hours, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, great movie.
Yeah, very good.
But that event, that's the type of thing that our unit is tasked with.
Okay.
With fixing or helping out.
Were these units created after the 79 incident in Iran with the hostages at the US embassy there? I mean, was it a response to, like, oh crap, we got to have mobility?
I don't think so. I think this unit was developed for the war on terror. Just elevated terror threats globally. Terrorism's gone, it didn't. International terrorism started back when I'd argue the founding of Israel, which was the 50s, 40s or 50s. It was immediately after World War.
1948, where I think was the first conflict between Israelis and Palestinians who were backed by Arab states in the neighborhood. I think 48 was that conflict.
Sure.
I could stand to be corrected, but certainly.
It's
along those
somewhere in there. But
timelines.
like, I think I would say, like, around the founding of Israel, like you have this long history of terrorism, which kind of coalesced around the Middle East and then got exported. Quickly, I would argue, but it's not been a new thing. But I don't think the average person was really aware of terrorism or anything else like that until the 2 towers, and not when 9/11 happened.
I think you could argue that after Vietnam, American attention on global events that had little to do with the Cold War really was quite minimal, right? And then, of course, with the Cold War ending, I mean, that's why some people call the 90s America's spring break. I mean, we were just, we got, fuel was cheap, gas was cheap. I mean, America was on top of the world. And so I think going into 9/11, I mean, I would suspect that you're talking the day 9/11 happened was probably the day when most Americans knew the least about international events in at least 100 years.
Yeah.
I suspect, because you're looking back at the 90s, which had really been, frankly, just a really prosperous and I don't want to say easy, but certainly prosperous and rather simple time.
I'd say so. I'm a child of the 90s. I was born in the late 80s. And so
Okay.
the 90s are what I remember. But like I don't, it could just been that I was a kid and whatnot. But you had Desert Storm. There was really nothing after that until 9/11. And that I remember that still as a sixth grade. And we lived just south of DC at that point.
Oh,
So
dang. Oh, so you were in Manassas at the time.
yeah, we were there. Fairfax was where I went to school, and that's very close to DC. So everything got shut down. I remember you had I was in sixth grade. I'll give you an idea how old I am, but like the parents kept coming in and picking up their kids, and we thought it was so funny. And eventually, after about 4 or 5 kids got picked up, the teacher was called out in the hall and talked to with, I guess, the head of the school, and then she came back in and actually told us what was going on. I think.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I think they flipped the television on, but it was weird because everything really shut down around there because you had the plane that went to the Pentagon, and then there was in Pennsylvania, there was a plane that crashed over there, and then obviously in New York. So all that area is relatively close, especially when you're talking flying distance. So.
Very close.
Yeah, compared to Wyoming. Yeah. Yeah. This is
Wyoming. Everything is distance. So you drive
Right.
2 hours. It is actually driving distance, but like
Right.
you go over there, you're in traffic most of the time. But
that was probably your first experience of seeing adults with it was probably the first time it was evident to you as a child that like, oh my God, these adults don't know what's going on.
maybe I don't know. I was still. I don't know how much I suppose it was scary, but it came from a very stable home, so
Okay.
I wasn't overly concerned about it. And there was I think it was shortly after that was the DC sniper, if you remember that.
Yeah, I do.
I think
Yeah.
that to me was more worrying in my mind.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because that was it was basically there was I think it was ended up being two guys, and they.
Was that the guy who was sniping out of a car?
Yeah,
He had
so
like a setup.
He had a license plate that would kind of move out of the way, and he was in a car, and
Okay.
he would shoot people out of the car, and it was random. It was it kind of slides right into the definition of terrorism. I don't know what it's political or ideological.
Or yeah. Right.
So he didn't have like specific targets he was going after, just
Yeah, it was random, and so like then that makes it a lot more difficult to figure out from a law enforcement perspective. Like where usually you have a reason for doing what you're doing, and or a reason you're targeting a specific person. And I guess he did. It was to terrorize people. And I haven't read his manifesto or anything, but it was a little bit less personal. It wasn't based off the individual necessarily. So
That's interesting.
but that I remember going out and being worried about it. What if we're the ones and everything else like that?
Right. Oh, okay.
But
Interesting.
out of a population that size, you're pretty safe.
Right. It just what are the odds?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. I remember my I think so we were homeschooled. So my dad it would have been like 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning on 9/11. So I remember my dad, for some reason, he usually was gone for work much earlier, but for some reason he had stayed behind, and he got a phone call from a neighbor because we didn't watch television, essentially. And we had one, but it was never on during the day. So we got a call from a friend, and me and my brothers were just at the table, supposedly doing homework, but we were just listening to my dad, and he starts talking about like, oh yeah, they could have taken off from JFK, or they could have blah blah blah. It's like, oh my gosh, they're right there, and he hung up the phone, and me and my brothers, we all run to him, and we're like, are we under attack? And he was like, yeah, apparently. He's like, turn on the television. But
yeah, so we ended up watching, the events for most of the day. And, my dad was like, well, no use being around here. I'm going to go to work. And my mother, I remember it so strongly. She was like, you think you're going to get anything done at work? Like everyone's gonna be paying attention to this. Like nothing's going to get done. He's like, well, got to go to work.
Gotta go.
Gotta go. So yeah, so like, I mean, honestly, I think we watched the towers fall. I think we watched like, the coverage from what happened in the Pentagon,
Yeah.
like all of that, my dad was at the office. Like we just watched it by ourselves. It was pretty wild.
Where were you at,
So-
you said?
So we were at my house in Vermont.
In Vermont.
Yeah,
Yes, you're
yeah.
on that east.
Yeah, we were just on the boundaries of like, oh, should we be concerned? In fact, like probably like 3 or 4 days later, there was this little like this little Piper Cub, this like little single engine aircraft. And, I don't know if it was like some old farmer who was like, well, I might as well just go fly around. Anyway, these two F-16s come screaming out of the airfield, because there was,
I think that was a news story, wasn't it?
what it might have been. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was right there. Yeah. So me and my brothers, again, we were just like watching from our back porch, this little like, this little single engine aircraft just, and these two F-16s come screaming at him. And he's like, oh crap. And he just dives for the forest and they're just right on him. So, I mean, I'm sure they just told him, you will land right now.
I think there was a complete air, it was a complete
Yeah, there was an air cap. Yeah,
air cap, whatever you call it. There's
yeah, like a
nobody was
week.
allowed to fly
Yeah.
for a good chunk of the East Coast, I believe. So yeah, that was something. It's odd to me now. I don't know. They were, because we, people, they call the war on terror our longest running war, where you have 2 generations of family fighting in it, which is, I don't think it's something to be bragged about. I think,
No.
but I don't know. Yeah, with the whole Afghanistan is where my other deployment was, but with the entire pullout of that, it was a little bit disappointing to I put that lightly, to see how that happened. There's a book I'm going through. It's right now is actually it was a special operations Marine. I guess he was in force reconnaissance in the early days of the war on terror. I think it was part of a group called Det 1 originally, but it was Marine Corps' first introduction. Well, it wasn't the first introduction, but it was an introduction to the special operation forces. Because until about, I think it was 2006 officially, we didn't have a special operations. You had force reconnaissance, which was under the control of the Marine Corps, and then there was SOCOM, which is its own command. When you have, your SEALs, your Green Berets, and, your Rangers and everything else like that. But this was before we got on board with MARSOC. But anyway, but he wrote a book that I'm going through right now. It's about him going in and saving his interpreter out of Afghanistan.
Okay. What's the book called?
Saving Aziz, I believe.
Is that what that new movie, The Covenant, is based off of?
Maybe. I'm not familiar. I haven't watched a movie and it's been a minute.
Okay, I was just curious. It was,
I think
There's a Guy Ritchie movie, actually.
Yeah, it's
Not
Jake-
a director you would expect, but yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal.
I guess the same premise as him going and saving his interpreter.
It could be, and like the Mighty Oaks Foundation, it's like a veteran. It was like he helped found, like he started the it was like just a veterans faith-based PTSD kind of thing that they try to help veterans with PTSD. But he was a founder of that as well, I believe. And yeah, so that's a book I'm going through right now. But he talks about that. I'm not very far into it, but kind of interesting. But the the 9/11, but you had when we got back from the first deployment, you had bin Laden was captured, and Benghazi happened after that. We got put on standby to fly back and put and relieve another unit because they were waiting for them to get bumped out to go and do what they were supposed to do.
Uh-huh.
And that never happened, obviously. So we had that whole, the whole thing was a fiasco.
Sorry, you're saying who was waiting to get bumped out? A
The-
fast reaction force?
yeah, a fast team that relieved us in Bahrain. So,
Okay.
So what would have happened is they would have gone,
Mm-hmm.
and then we would have come and waited in Bahrain.
Okay.
In case they needed more guys. 'Cause
Okay.
You always have to have a unit there to,
Okay.
ready to bump.
So they were sort of on deck,
Yeah.
but they never got sent into play.
Correct.
And the scuttlebutt is they should have been sent in. Is
Yeah.
that okay?
Exact, basically, and like we could have been there within, I think I don't want to, maybe I shouldn't say that, but very short amount of time.
Okay. All right. All right.
That was our job. That was our mission set. And so we're seeing all this go on and just being ready to go. And everything else like that. But yeah, never got tapped to go. And obviously some people paid the price with their life because they didn't get anybody in there. But
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about being in the military as a job that needs to be done despite whose regime currently occupies Washington, which is the way some people articulate it. Because I had a good friend, who was thinking about enlisting, and basically during one administration, let's say, he said, can't do it.
Yeah.
And then another administration arrived and he said, all right, I'm going in. I mean, he really made very very practical decisions based on, all right, who is the commander in chief?
Yeah.
And I find that interesting, but in your view of it, this job needs to be done 24/7.
It does. I mean, and there's definitely I guess you'd call it a balancing act, because like you might be sent, this might be a little bit controversial, but I think we did a lot of good stuff over there, but I don't know that I'm glad I went to Afghanistan and not Iraq for a number of reasons. One, we generally had smaller bombs in Afghanistan, but so you didn't get completely vaporized when you hit anything. I had a buddy that was near one when it went off, and he was fine. But over in Iraq, they were known for just having these just massive IEDs. And so when you did hit one, you were vaporized, just going.
Oh, sorry, you're talking about the enemy's armament. Okay.
Or that their use of explosives on our armor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, but Iraq, like Afghanistan, was where Osama bin Laden was, and so I felt a little bit more justified going in there. In Iraq, I always wondered. I don't know. You have all this information coming out these days and talking about why we'll just say uncovering the swamp as we're in DC and everything, and figuring out. I don't know. You wonder if we had good reasons for being there necessarily. And now I don't think.
Who were we talking to about that, Tom? We were talking about this very question.
Father, actually.
Was it?
I think we were talking about how it's all kind of been decided now that we probably shouldn't have been there.
Yeah, because you can say, look, my brain's stuck. Head guy in Iraq.
Hussein.
Saddam Hussein.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I need another sip of whiskey.
Saddam Hussein ended up a little stuck himself,
Yeah. So, you have a situation there, but like you have a guy that he's clearly doing wrong things, they say he was gassing people and everything else like that. But at the same time, he had some form of rule, and established some level of law and order. Because you go over there now, they're warring tribes. It's chaotic. Iraq's chaotic. Afghanistan is chaotic because of you have all these warring factions. He at least had somewhat of a top on it. I'm not advocating for the way that he did things or anything else like that, but you also have
there was a stability.
There's a stability to it, and that's why the government is the only institution, we'll call it, that's given the right of the sword.
Sure. Sure.
biblically speaking. And so
Mhm.
there's something to be said for that as well. Again, I'm not saying, I don't think he was ruling biblically. So let's not say this, but you have to.
Well, he certainly resembled some biblical figures, you know,
Yeah.
maybe not the ones we're supposed to emulate.
There's a cost for everything, right? So we went over there, did this stuff, and the things that happened. There's did more people die, and are more people currently dying than if we just left them alone? I don't know,
It's a hard question to
It is.
ask.
but and then again, we went same thing with Afghanistan. I don't think we pulled out properly. I think we could have, because people talk about, well, we're not in the business of building nations, but South Korea,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
That's an example. We went in there and we fought there, and South Korea is doing way better than North Korea. Now, I think there might be, I don't know, be interesting to kind of dissect how they did that. And if you look at Afghanistan in, what was it, the 60s, I want to say,
Mm.
it very modern. The women are wearing dresses, like
Oh.
normal dresses, and they're walking. It was like very, very, Kabul was a very nice place.
Same thing is true of Beirut. I mean,
Beirut,
yeah,
that's
Yeah.
that's where I was.
yeah. Beirut was like the
Some of the worst traffic in the world, I'd argue.
some of the what?
The worst traffic.
Yeah.
I'm from Miami, so that's
Right. You've experienced East Coast traffic for sure. Yeah.
but yeah. So anyway, just things to think about, and I think I don't necessarily again, bearing in mind the government does have the power of the sword, but I think that doesn't mean that everything that they decide is just.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see on Judgment Day how that
Right.
all pans out, because
Yeah.
you have to, people will be held accountable for the things they do, and then you think about, and this is probably what your friend was thinking about, what level of accountability do you have
Hmm.
participating in that? And I would like to think that there's some level of mercy given, because like we're pretty limited in our scope, obviously, as being mortal and not knowing how all these things connect. I think Father Shoemaker was actually chatting a little bit about that, about whether God cares about all these little things, about who wins the basketball game and all the things.
Oh,
But,
yeah.
so like we're so limited, but like the way I would think about it in my head, I would not necessarily there for the grand scope of the thing, right? So but I think I can be justified certainly in defending myself or the people that I'm with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if I'm given information to go do something,
Hmm.
and it seems, on the up and up, these guys are done X, Y, and Z, that's why we're going to get them. And that's what I believe, whether it's true or not. I don't have a way of verifying it due to the nature of the structure. You think about moral accountability and everything else like that. I think, again, just, some measure of grace will be given. But these are just things to think about, when you're dealing with this stuff. So
What would you tell, think about it in two different ways, some 17, 18-year-old who's thinking about military service, or if you could go back and talk to your own 17 or 18-year-old self. I mean, what would you say to 17-year-old James Wooten, who's like, I think I'm going to enlist?
yeah, I mean, it needs to be done. I think I would, and if you want to kind of stay above the political atmosphere and actually serve with I'll use the phrase good people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
To go for the hardest thing you think you can do. So in most military branches, I mean, it's going to be special operations, of course, but do something difficult. The Marine Corps has got the force reconnaissance, which aren't special operations, and then there's all these other units to go into, like, you have units that are special operations, the Navy SWIC, they call them, their special water combat craft or something like that. But those guys, they're still doing those things. There's a barrier to entry, as it were. It's difficult.
Okay.
Or you can talk about the Rangers and stuff like that. There's all these
Sure.
barriers to entry, and through that, process and getting through these barriers, the guys that come out on the end from what I've seen are higher caliber. Like
Okay.
I think I'll pat myself on, or the Marine Corps on the back a little bit here. I think the Marine Corps has done a better job of other larger institutions, in my opinion, that of isolating itself from the political climate. It's not
Okay.
immune. Yeah,
Okay.
there's issues, and I saw them even when I was in. It's changed a lot since I was in, but
Hmm.
Marine Corps is still difficult. When I was looking to join the branch, I was like, I don't know what I want to do. So I went home and I Googled what's the hardest branch of the military to get into. And some people are going to might jump on for this, but and it said,
comments roll.
get the comments. Let's go. I like to say, first of all, that I like the Navy. It's my second favorite branch.
Okay.
Branch. It's the
Yeah, those poor Coast Guard guys, you know.
well, we call the Marine Corps the men's department of the Navy.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I like and then that's the first thing that came up, and the reasoning was, it's got the longest boot camp and everything else like that. And so like, all right, that's what I went and did with, and didn't really put a whole lot of other thought other than their uniform looked nice. But yeah, the Marine Corps, due to its small nature, I think they've insulated themselves a little bit. So it's yeah. Anyway.
No.
Well, I mean, I've heard that. Well, it's almost like common thought, especially among young boys. It's like, oh, they're a Marine. There's like something to say that they're a Marine besides something else. It's like there's like that. I've had a couple friends. Well, one friend. I don't know if you know, the Fredericksons, but
I do not.
he's reserve, and like he was just saying like going through it is like there's like such an honor when they all got their plaque at the end of their training that they're Marine.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Yeah, your Eagle, Globe, and Anchor, your EGA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like they were, there all those boys felt like they really became the men they wanted to be after they got that.
Certainly.
And I don't know, I think there's still a lot to be said. Like, I think the Marine Corps has the lowest budget of all of the
Because
departments.
where I believe the budget filters through the Navy, and the Navy gives us kind of some stuff. And
What they deem fit. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. They actually tried, I believe. I don't know when this was. I think Congress was looking at actually just getting rid of the Marine Corps. This was decades and decades ago. And I think the public actually came to the defense and said that they needed the Marine Corps, so they kept it around. It's the only branch that can be deployed into combat without an act of Congress. So it's like, and then I think the Airborne's like that as well. But you look at the I don't know how big the Airborne is, but the Marine Corps is an entire branch, and so it's quite a bit, quite unique in that regard.
Do you think that for guys who go in, right?
Circle back to the original question.
I'm just, I mean, there's so many questions we could be going into. I mean, but I'm just curious. I mean, do you think that for guys who go in, a really tough boot camp or a really tough training cycle could serve some of the same development rite as what ancient societies had for all young men, right?
Yeah.
Some sort of rite of initiation. Yeah. I mean, I think the Australian indigenous tribes called it going walkabout.
You got a gogi for the Spartans, but that they weren't general society, I guess. But
no, that's fair. Yeah, general society for them. I mean,
a rite of passage.
Yeah, rite of passage. Yeah, rite of passage, rite of initiation. Do you think that for some young men, that is what they're getting in the military? It seems to me that our current American society does not require something analogous.
No, I think it's something that's lacking. It's interesting you go that direction, but yeah, it's something that's lacking in society. Like I think it did that for me. I think I don't know how mature I am, but that process.
Let's get your wife on the phone.
Guys got to do hard stuff to mature. Unfortunately, it's like we're pretty stubborn in that regard. Like unless you have to do something, usually you don't do it. But then once you have to do it, it's like the guys in World War II. They call it the greatest generation. Not taking anything away from them, but they had to, and they bucked up and they did it.
Yeah.
But they had no other choice. And like it's kind of like that in the in the military, but yeah, they ship you off there, and guys will do all kinds of things once they get there, and you got this shock of like, what have I done when you arrive for boot camp? And guys do almost anything to get sent back, and they know how it works because I was thinking this too because I was a kid from South Florida, didn't really know what it was like to be cold, quite frankly. And you could argue that Parris Island, South Carolina, doesn't get that cold, but gets colder than South Florida. So
Well, and I
you're
guess
there.
if you're in a t-shirt in the surf at
Yeah.
6 a.m.
Exactly. Well, it's like, and what does it mean to be uncomfortable, right? Like, I don't know that I knew that until I got in the military. I think the Catholic college, you take groups up to the mountains,
Yeah, into the winds, yeah.
But like, what is it like? And I guess this would be the example people can think about. But like in the military, sometimes you're not even allowed to decide what you're wearing. And so, being cold or, being exposed to the elements, and someone's like, you're just going to be cold, dude. Like, or you're cold for weeks or months or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You talk about, you can go into the at the Chosin Reservoir in the Korean War, but it's like, that difficulty brings perspective to men, I think, and it makes you more able to bear burdens and make hard decisions, I think. It's like, honestly, we don't have to deal with being uncomfortable very often. Like I say I'm a little bit of a glutton for punishment. Sometimes, but I would run half marathons without training just to see if I was still tough enough to do it. It's
Right.
or, whatever it is, or like, jujitsu is a good example. You're in this, but like, that's not fun. I mean, I guess it can get fun, but like sometimes, some days you're
It's
like,
more fun the better you get. Yeah.
the more, the less you get, joked out by somebody else. But, doing hard things, lifting, doing things that are uncomfortable. There's such a disdain for any kind of physical activity these days. I don't know if you noticed that. Like you talk about, it's like, oh, you talk about, well, why don't you just walk? People are like, oh, I don't want to walk. Walking. We're talking about walking, probably one of the most basic human functions.
Sure.
People have a disdain for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't have to do anything uncomfortable if we don't want to. And so,
Well, I was talking to my brother about this, and he was saying that he feels like some of these things have been put into silos, right? Like basically, I mean, yeah, Instagram is full of guys who are super shredded, super fit, run marathons, right? But they're part of this fitness tribe.
Yeah.
Right. And then if you're in the video game tribe or the tech bro tribe or the finance bro tribe or some other, again, I'm going to use the word tribe, but if you're in sort of some other group, that sort of thing is considered beneath your attention, right? So 150 years ago, 90% of society probably had a general level of fitness that our society does not possess today. Today, we have maybe 5% of society who possesses this super level of fitness.
Yeah.
But again, they're sort of appealing to this very specific segment of society. And if your goal in life is to be the best World of Warcraft player, fitness has no claim on your attention or your time.
Yeah.
Right. So even though theoretically we probably have the fittest people who have ever lived today, they are both the beneficiaries of a system that allows specialization. But then also they appeal to only a very narrow set of our general population. We don't have a general societal set of standards for ourselves.
No, it's true. It's like, I think it's our culture has become diluted. There's a saying, it was on a man should be able to write a sonnet, plan an invasion, build a house, plant a garden, basically be a jack of all trades. And I think it ends with like specialization is for insects or something like that. So the jack of all trades thing, like that's I think that's kind of been lost. So like you do have a lot, I mean, and there's a benefit to it as well, but you've kind of lost that could be a reason why we have people questioning even gender roles and gender identity these days anymore too, because everything's become so easy, and to an extent, a lot of the male and female, we haven't been required, us fulfilling our historical gender roles isn't really, seemed to be less necessary because like, the wars that you're not worried about warring with a tribe next door. The United States has been so insulated from conflict and the things that happen, and things have gotten so easy
Yeah,
where you
probably
have,
since at least, the late 1890s, there were, if you were in the American military in the probably ending in the 1890s, you might have faced enemies within the United States, right? And frankly, it was indigenous tribes typically. And then there was, of course, the Mexican American War. But after that, you shipped overseas to fight.
yeah. And so like, and then, we'll bring this around, like, and from a woman's standpoint, if you're talking about like traditional roles, watching and taking care of kids,
Mm,
kids go to school for what, 8 to 10 hours a day.
Mhm.
And most households are two-income households now. And so like you have had this dilution of gender roles, which, I think are good and, biblically are good, of course,
Mm.
but it's all been diluted, and and so people are feeling like, oh, I don't have to do that anymore because, X, Y, and Z. And
Sure.
in reality, I think it's part of a thing that's by design. God's design gives us meaning and joy. And I think we've been deprived of that. And then for men, again, the rite of passage thing, like being a dude, like you should be punched in the face, experience that. You should do hard stuff because it makes you better. And then I think that it's different for men and women, but like like in Scotland, they had their male rite of passage for a lot of the clans over there was their stones. There's a documentary by Rogue Fitness called Stone Land. It's very good. It's not very long. It's probably, I think, less than an hour, but they go and they look at a lot of these historic clan stones that in order to be considered a man,
mm.
you had to do X, Y, and Z with the stones. For some of them, it's just picking it up and setting it up on another rock that's like, chest height. And for some of it's, you pick it up and you have to walk a certain distance with it. Further, that you got to throw it a certain distance, whatever it is. But that was a difficult thing that you had to be like, okay, as a boy, you're thinking, okay, this is what I got to do to become, to graduate as or become a man and be considered, get respect in my group of people that I'm part of.
Yeah.
And so that's not a thing here. What's something like that? Do we have anything like that? I don't think we do.
I feel like the only thing we really have generally accepted is the drinking age, which is really sad. But it's like when you become 21, it's like, oh, now you're an adult.
Congratulations, you can get inebriated now.
Yeah,
You can get
exactly.
inebriated, yeah.
Can you hold your liquor? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in certain sub tribes, it's, can you seduce women? Right.
Mhm.
That is seen as a power, right? In certain other tribes, it's like, can you make a lot of money? Right.
But are there rites of passage though? I think that's what I'm thinking. Like,
I don't think I don't think American society has a generally accepted rite of passage.
yeah, no,
And especially not one specifically for men, right?
no.
I mean, everyone's kind of expected to graduate high school.
Yeah.
But that's everyone. And there's no, so, well, we gotta have Tom Zimmer on to talk about the WCC, the Wyoming Catholic College outdoor trips. But I remember when I was on those trips and it was -30, we were out in tents. And I do remember having the thought, wow, it is -30. It's the middle of the night. We're sleeping in tents. Like, if I remember the thought, if I'm not careful, I might die. Like tonight, not like in some theoretical point in the future.
Yeah.
Could be relatively soon.
Right. And it was like, I'm like right on I can see the edge. Right. I didn't think, oh, I'm on the edge, like, oh, I'm dying. But I remember thinking, I can see the edge. If you drop off, you're dead. And I remember thinking, as we talked about it later at the college, and there was frankly a lot done to sort of make sure that people were not in -30-degree weather, in sleeping in tents, what I mean?
Yeah.
And I remember people like, oh man, we got to make sure that doesn't happen again. I do remember having the thought, if this is meant to be a rite of passage, if that's what we're shooting for, and I'm not saying we are, death has to be on the table. Like it has to be in the cards. And I think that if we're going to talk about a rite of passage for men, I think typically in most cultures it's featured like we're not saying you're about to die, but it's there, right? It's in the realm of possibilities. I'd be happy to learn more about different rites of passages in different cultures.
Yeah.
It reminds me of one I heard about. I don't remember which tribe of Indians it is.
Mhm.
I don't remember which one it was, but I think when the boy is 12 years old
Mhm.
is when the rite of passage is,
Mm.
and he's put in the forest blindfolded, and he said you have to sit there through the night, and then in the morning you could take your blindfold off,
Mm.
but you're not given anything. He just has to sit there. And so he sits there through the whole night, hearing all these animals come about him, and like bears growling, the wolves howling, and all these things. And he can't, if he takes the blindfold off to look, he fails. I don't know if he can go do it again or not. But in the morning, when he's about to take the blindfold off, someone takes it off, and it's his dad, and he's sitting right next to him the whole night.
Mm.
Oh.
So his dad was fighting off all the animals, and he had no clue.
Yeah.
I
That's
thought
neat.
that was probably one of the
That's
coolest
cool.
ones
Yeah.
I've ever heard. But
I like
cool.
that.
Yeah, no, no, that's good. But I don't know. It's like, I don't know that necessarily. Maybe life and I don't know. I would say that life and death doesn't necessarily have to be on the table for the, I don't know,
Okay.
rite of passage, but I think, I don't even know if it necessarily has to be rite of passage. It's like, but you need to do hard things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you need,
And no one's going to carry you to the finish line, so to speak.
you need to do it yourself. You need to be uncomfortable. You need to make hard choices. You need to lead, which I know Knowles does this, but they would rotate off who would be land navigating for everybody. And but I'm assuming it's something similar there. But you take that role, that leadership role on yourself. It's probably pretty nerve-wracking. I've done this in the military context, but you're deciding where everybody goes and hoping you get them in the right spot, that you did your job right and everything else like that. It's like being able to put up with that the pressure of being the one that the burden falls on to get things done. So,
well, and I think the natural world in that context is a great classroom because that thunderstorm's not waiting for you. That hailstorm's not waiting for you, right? Like there is if you misnavigate, right, and you're out on the north facing slope of a mountain instead of down at the camp you were supposed to be at 2 hours ago, and a storm rolls in, there's no escape button, right?
you got to deal with it.
Yeah,
you got to do it. And that's something that's missing from the education system. This is coming from somebody whose parents have, both in formal education. But I feel a lot of time is wasted in the classroom. I think in application, it's kind of like with my job. Like I can go down to the police academy for amount of time. Wyoming has one of the shortest police academies in the nation. And I think it's a good thing because the true learning occurs not by just hearing the information told to you. You have to go and do it. Applying the information. And this is an interesting thing that they've changed their entire training dynamic down at the police academy. When I went, 7 years ago, it was a pretty typical thing. You sit in a classroom, you get lectured, and then you take a written test, and then at the end, weeks or a month or two later, you do a practical application portion where you're expected to execute the things that you learned in the classroom.
A
couple months ago.
Okay.
Whatever it was.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not saying there's not a place for classroom in learning these things and discussion and everything else like that, because things can be learned like that. But like for most things have to be physically done. So what they've done, they've taken that learning environment and what they do. I mean, there's still some exposure in a classroom, in a classroom setting, but they really focus on, it's not necessarily how you get something done. It's what the end state results in being. Like you obviously want to do it legally and everything else like that, but did they accomplish the goal, which was to lawfully detain? Maybe it's to lawfully detain somebody, right? they don't really nitpick on that, but like they do a lot more of this practical application training.
Okay.
You're interacting with people. And because a cop isn't viable on the street by himself until probably at least year 3,
Oh, wow.
in my opinion.
Mhm.
That's when you've kind of figured things out and everything else like that.
You have
So-
that correct balance of knowing when to engage and also when to observe and gather more data, so to speak.
Sure. And then there's the people aspect. Like I'm a people person. I like talking with people. So I'll have
Mhm.
conversations on traffic stops
Mhm.
with people, and you end up, being at their window for like 10 minutes. But, it's, you have to be able to talk with people, in my opinion, a good cop.
Mhm.
I think, there's plenty of cops that aren't good at that. But if you're going to be a good cop, I think you need to be able to engage with the community well, because the whole it's not a pleasant experience. Like when I stopped you the other day,
Sure.
was that
Sure.
pleasant before you knew it was me?
Before, no, certainly not before I knew it was you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I was like, shit.
what do I do? But
What I do?
almost every interaction, this is why people like firefighters and not law enforcement, right? Because every
Mm.
interaction you have with law enforcement is kind of confrontational to some extent by nature, right? You've done something wrong. That's why I'm here.
Mhm.
Right.
Right.
So
You're right. Right.
like usually within the first, my first couple sentences, like I got a framework that'll usually it's the same thing every stop and everything, because I don't have to think about it, but it usually gets people talking. But you usually start to say, hey, this is why I stopped you, and
Mhm.
everything else like that. Then you kind of ask, like, how's the day going otherwise? Or you say something else like that, just get them talking. Yes, start asking about their day. Now, it's to get information potentially on the reason I stopped them, but
Yeah.
it's also to have a conversation and put them at ease, because like I do this for a living, and I get pulled over and I don't like it.
Right.
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 And so I know it's uncomfortable for them. So just have that conversation. It's good for, I guess we'll call it PR. And it's good to know your local law enforcement, because they're the ones in your community. And then, that are, hopefully keeping it safe and keeping the public safe in a lawful and moral manner.
Right. If you could, would you put cops back on a beat, like a walk, like hey, I just walked these 6 blocks or whatever it is. I mean, we've certainly,
Yeah. So
for the most part, adopted a patrol car based system.
it is. Yeah. And so in New York, they still do that, I believe, because like you have the population, like basically, like a square block, you have a huge amount of people because of the,
It might exceed the population of Lander.
it probably does. Exactly. And so
Like 2 city blocks.
yeah. And so you start running into I think a beat would be nice, but like, I don't know that you can't just say, hey, you're going to walk this. Like you need to be mobile enough, because like I can't run from a couple miles from one side of town to the other, or run to my patrol car, get in my patrol car if I got something that's going on. Right. So, but I think what does need to happen is, that's why I do what I do on traffic stops. Cause like that's a portion that a time when I know I'm going to have interaction with the community. Right. And so that's where we'll have a little bit of that conversation and everything else like that. And why, that's a prime opportunity to do it. Not everybody does it. Some guys will get out. We have a couple, and they'll go into the coffee shop and have coffee in uniform, chat with people. They'll go to the schools and walk around and, and talk with parents. I think that's generally one area where law enforcement fails at, generally speaking, is that, because like
Sorry, in the schools?
yeah, go chat with people in the schools. Like we have school resource officers that stay there.
Okay.
They're, and they're around at any given time, but, more FaceTime and having those conversations with people about the job and why you're doing things. Because when I do something, when I pull you over, when I do X, Y, and Z, it's not personal. I mean, if you're doing it right, I'm not, a cop, you shouldn't have any vendettas. Somebody clearly, they broke the law, or you have reasonable suspicion to talk to them or contact them, or, probably got, what do you want, legal jargon.
Sure.
But that's, your community are going to go on. We're going to launch in a segue here. BLM riots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is that 2019?
2020.
2020.
Late 2020,
It
right?
was like July of that.
Okay, so not even particularly late.
So I don't know where we had a relatively large group of people show up for the one we had here. Were you here for that?
I mean, I lived here at the time, but I didn't
Yeah, so it
see it.
was an interesting experience, and I was like, actually, so we're a small department and everything else like that. I think there ended up being at least a couple hundred people there, and for a town our size, a department our size, we don't have the resources to deal with an issue if it happens. Really,
If something goes sideways with a couple hundred people,
you're
you're
it is what it is. But we had everybody called out. Fire department was on standby and everything else like that. Groups of people started going, and I'm seeing these people walk to this event that which seems pretty clearly anti-law enforcement as a whole, without getting into the weeds. But like and so it was very disappointing. These are people I work out with. These are people that I buy my coffee from and everything else like that. And they're going to this event. And I'm thinking, like, really, do they not like the job that I'm doing? And so they go to the event, they have a conversation, and everybody starts spreading out across, the blocks of Main Street and everything else like that. And the people that organized the event weren't from Lander, from what I could tell. Or at least the people instigating, we'll say, the ones that were having people yell things back. But you had a time there where they start yelling. Is like people were like, hey, they yell Black Lives Matter, and everybody repeated Black Lives Matter. I was like, well, obviously, duh, life matters, right?
sure.
And so they repeated that, and then they started saying stuff like, no justice, no peace, and things like that. And they were,
Oh, geez.
and so they yelled that, and then they were, another thing that they were yelling, they were like, hey, ho, ho, racist cops have got to go, and everything else like this. And when they started yelling those things, between, those two things that they were trying to get the crowd to repeat, I should say the people that were yelling were the instigators, the people that I didn't know who they were. When they were yelling those things, the crowd didn't really repeat those.
Interesting.
It was and so I remember hearing that it was like a fizzled repeat of that. And so to me, that was encouraging. It was telling me that the community that we have here, at least, doesn't want any form of violence, because you look at the result of that organization's protest, whatever you want to call it, vandalism, terrorism, whatever you want. We won't get to into this, but they didn't want what was going on in the rest of the country, so they didn't repeat that, and they didn't repeat the racism issue, because I don't think they think we have an issue. I don't think we do, because we deal with a lot of different people here. Lander's a pretty international community, believe it or not, because of Knowles, and you got
Knowles for sure.
The Catholic college brings people, and I pulled a guy over from, I don't know if he's from Canada, going to school, but so international.
Oh yeah, I know who that is, but I won't out him on the Green Dragon.
No, he's always good. Actually, I've never had a poor interaction with a student from the college, so I will say that. But yeah, so like, I don't think that was an issue, but like that was interesting, that whole dynamic. And it's like, okay, maybe I guess we're doing something right. So I left that whole event, as we call it. There were no issues, thankfully, and left the whole event thinking, and I ended up having some actually really good conversations with people in the community after that, because again, these are people I work out with, and everything else like that. And so it was coming to an understanding, or having that communication piece about things. But I left the event feeling like, okay, I can still cop here and not
A little more reassured. Okay.
oh, sure.
Yeah. That you're not policing a mob that, given the opportunity, would just,
because quite frankly, I'm like,
you down.
it's like, I don't know if you want to use the term casting pearls before swine. If you don't want me here, then I won't.
Yeah.
Like, in that, but that's a community decision, right? But on the municipal level, it's probably one of the, that you have the most direct impact on where you live and work on this, what I would say is probably the lowest level of policing. If you want to, throw the family out and everything else like that. We'll say policing goes on in the family, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah,
depends on the family. Yeah.
but like there's a direct correlation between what I do and how in the community results. and I've seen Lander change for the better is from a crime standpoint since I started, um, you know, 7 years ago on patrol,
Okay.
and things have gotten, relatively better.
Hmm.
So it's a fun thing to see. And then you can also be held, the municipal level government, it's a lot easier to hold them accountable than it is somebody in DC, right?
Sure.
Because like they don't live and work in the community that I'm in.
Right.
Mhm.
They're making decisions from over there, so they don't know, they're separated from the consequences of their decisions.
Mhm.
Here that's not the case,
Right.
which is a good thing. I think accountability is a good thing.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
because it's, again, you got the government's been gifted the sword, right? So that's a that's a that's a big deal. Um,
Right. Right. One not to be born lightly because
Exactly.
yeah, the sword cuts. The sword cuts.
does
So, what's your what's your vision for Lander's next decade? I mean, what would you like to see?
Oh, I mean, you could this. I guess this could extend globally, but a turning and a repentance to Christ.
Sure. Sure.
So if
Worldwide
Worldwide!
goals applied to the best town in Lander. Sorry, the best town in Wyoming, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
no.
I love Lander. I really do.
I do also. So I mean, you could say that first and foremost. Um, from that perspective, I'd like if we're gonna, I don't know. I also work for the city, so you gotta. I would like to see more small businesses.
Mm,
We have there's a lot of nonprofits here, and we can go down that rabbit hole. There's a disproportionate amount of, in my opinion, of nonprofits and we'll say art galleries. I think a lot of people share this opinion, but like I think it would be nice to see more small business here, because like the how expensive it is here. I mean,
absolutely.
you being a realtor, I don't even live in Lander anymore because I got priced out of the market. But anyway,
Jeez.
the
I'm part of the problem.
No, no. it would happen either way,
Yeah.
But you need good working class jobs here. I'm going to sound like a politician, but like some, a sustainable wage. We also get a lot of people that retire here that just come here with money,
Sure.
and so
Sure.
a little bit of a balancing act on that part, because like you need people working and providing services and things for people to live. That's every community needs that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can honestly say that we've gotten to the point where if you want a 3-bed, 2-bath house that a family can move into, it doesn't even have to be the fanciest thing in the world, but a family can move into and live in the day they buy it. You can't in Lander, you can't have that for less than 300,000.
No.
We have arrived at that point,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I do think that's a big part of it. I mean, the market is what it is. I think, but you need they talk about like affordable housing and everything else like that. I mean, I think you need to provide a way for people to make their life affordable, make an affordable living. I don't know if that's be a good way to put it or not, but you need to have jobs around that people can make a decent wage at. Manufacturing a lot recently. We've had Wyoming's been bringing in a lot of manufacturing. I think it was Weatherby. I think
Oh yeah.
came to Sheridan.
Yep.
Are you familiar with?
I'm not.
Yeah. So Weatherby's a gun manufacturer. I think I think bolt actions, lever actions, that kind of thing.
I believe so.
I'm not a big Weatherby guy.
Yeah.
There's Aero Precision,
Okay.
which is a very large AR-15 manufacturer. I think is going to either Rock Springs or Cheyenne.
Oh wow.
Really?
There's
Arrows?
Yeah.
Oh.
So that's pretty big. Thunder Beast suppressor manufacturers and down there. Stag Arms is down there. in Cheyenne, but all these, I think Thunder Beast was started here, but I believe all the other names were, imported from another state.
Okay.
So manufacturing is a big one. I think that's going to be where the big money's made, and we have a ton of resources here that we're not tapping, of course. But I think this is kind of funny. I heard I verify all this. This is stuff information I've gotten secondhand from a trusted friend that, but Scottsdale Mint. I
Okay.
believe they're in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Uh-huh.
They're moving to Casper,
Really?
and what they do, minting of gold, silver, precious metals, that kind of thing. So
Huh.
it's
That's cool.
it's kind of, yeah, all these things are coming to Wyoming, but I haven't seen. I don't know if Landers tried to get anything. We're centrally located. We got a beautiful spot here. Kifaru is a outdoor equipment company. I've been using them for probably about 10 years at least before they came in, using their equipment, and they were out of Colorado. But all these manufacturers are leaving these not friendly states
Sure.
to come to some place that's business friendly. Wyoming's very business friendly, but Kifaru over in Riverton make phenomenal outdoor gear equipment. But I think that's a big thing that the powers that be in the city should be looking at, I think.
Yeah. I get the general impression that Riverton, so of course my job takes me primarily to Riverton and Lander. Yeah. It just seems to me that Riverton really wants to own, frankly, the retail and shop. Well, not even shopping. So that's retail, but just general services in Fremont County.
Yeah.
And I just kind of get the impression that Lander kind of has a vibe of we want to stay this small little mountain town.
Yeah, and I've talked to a couple people about this, and I understand the sentiment. Like, I would love for Lander to stay like basically exactly as it is, and not have any changes, no more people to move here and everything else like that. I'm an implant though too. Like no, I don't think any all of us are implants, right?
Yeah.
So that's a nice thought and everything else like that. But the bottom line is the town's going to grow whether we like it or not. The only thing that we'll just say the powers that be have control over is the type of people they're getting here.
Sure.
And I think we've become, and the prices are evident of this. You have like a little bit of a unbalancing of that. Like you need, I think Lander is lacking in well-paying jobs. It's not necessarily that there's a problem with any group, but like, I definitely think the only job, like what job can you step into here and also go and buy a house?
Certainly not any entry level jobs at this point. Yeah. I mean, you have to be 5-10 years into a career to command the salary that it takes to buy a house here.
I would say so. So like, but yeah, Lander's going to grow. You just have control of what type of people you're going to bring in. So like, I don't think it's a nice thought, but I think that's all it is. Cause like people are coming in. You're not going to keep people away from this. Like this is a nice place to live.
Yeah. Once you spend a summer here, you're hooked.
And then you obviously, I think you all were brought here from the college, I'm guessing.
Sure.
And so you ended up staying, right? So you got the college bringing regular people in, and then you got Knowles bringing regular people in at the very least. This is just, just those two things. And so I don't know. You're going to grow. You can't stop it. So just decide how you want to grow instead of just saying, oh, I don't want to grow. You're going to grow.
All right.
That's a good point. I know like a lot of people have been mentioning just how, kind of dull downtown Lander is now.
Yeah.
There's like 4 restaurants.
There is.
And it's like there's so much that could happen down there.
Well, go look at that. Have you been over to and it is what it is, but like you go over to I've made this point to a couple people this week, so it's funny you bring that up. You go to the downtown in Riverton, way more things that I'm interested in going into.
Yeah.
Way more places that I'd be interested in spending my money. Because there's actually places to do that. Like, don't get me wrong. We got some good coffee. Crux is great coffee. Who's the guy that's managing it now?
Sean.
Sean.
Yeah, Sean Wood.
So I go in
Mhm.
there. Okay, I'm gonna do a little shout out here. Freaking Sean. Okay. And then the guy that's
Shout out to
the other
Sean.
the guy that's working for him with the glasses. Oh, it's his other number 2 man.
Oh, wait, no. Sean is he's
The guy with the glasses.
Yeah,
and
that's
the other
Sean.
guy. Okay,
Yeah.
Sean. That's what I
You're the-
thought. You were
okay, the guy
confusing me.
running the place. Who was the guy? Sorry, the guy who owns the place. That's Andrew.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, big
So
Andrew.
Sean, yeah. Shout out to Sean in his burritos. So I'm
Um,
not
Yeah.
even so go in there, go into the Crux and order one of their breakfast burritos and tell them you want the Sean special. I don't know if he came up. I'm guessing he'd done this before, but like I didn't heard of it until I'd asked for it. But like I went in there once and I was like, give me everything on that, And it was like, and it had to list everything. It was like, you want it, you seemed kind of like shocked when I told him like, you want everything? I was like, yeah, just
Yeah.
put everything
It
on that
works.
burrito. Yeah. And hopefully Sean makes it. Other people can make it, but Sean just has a little bit extra pizzazz with it.
Man, he puts the sour cream on the inside of the burrito instead of a little
gosh.
cup on the side.
Yes.
Makes a big difference.
Maybe that's what it is. So if they're listening, but yeah, Sean that is the best breakfast burrito I've ever had. And it is just a phenomenal thing.
Yeah.
And so it's a skosh spicy, and I'm a redhead, but the spiciness is good. The world's best burrito, Crux Coffee, Lander, Wyoming.
300 Main Street.
300 Main
Yeah,
Street.
come on down.
Go in and ask for the Sean special. I don't care if you see something on the list that you don't like, you will like it in this burrito.
Yeah.
Just
Right. You
phenomenal.
may not be a cilantro fan, but man, he puts that cilantro and onion in there.
Yeah, it is.
That's right.
And then Lincoln Street's got phenomenal baked goods. But anyway, yeah, so not taking anything away from those businesses. Those are great things, but those are eateries. You got a lot of non-profits and everything else like this. And then yeah, like where can I spend money on something that I want to buy? Like I'd have loved if Kafaru was over in Lander. Maybe they wouldn't have
that would be
made it,
cool.
but like outdoor equipment, Wind River Outdoor, phenomenal. Those guys are great. We use them we recommend people over there for our training company, but they do a great job, the guys and everything. But like, yeah, there's the Main Street in Riverton, I'll just say, is a little bit more interesting because I think they've done what you were saying.
It's right. Well, it's just you can. So, I mean, Fremont County, the commercial base, right? The number of people who can come and spend their money in Fremont County is right now considered to be about 40,000 people, right? And Riverton, God bless them, but they have set themselves up as the place to be if you want to run something other than a coffee shop, a restaurant, or a gas station.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got clothes to sell, Riverton. You got jewelry to sell, Riverton. You got a pawn shop or a thrift store, Riverton.
Yeah.
A lot of those businesses have tried to be here in Lander, and they
I'll
just
tell you one right now, it was Bells and Bows. They're now over in Riverton.
absolutely, yeah.
The gal that runs that, she's wonderful. I think she's actually doing the Golden Buffalo in that neat little jewelry store. But yeah, she left because of that and moved over there. It's like sad to see you go, but I get it.
Yeah.
Now you so
It was crazy. So I had a wedding with one of my best friends. He was getting married. He calls me up like literally 10 days before the wedding. He's like, we finally decided what the groomsmen have to wear. It was like, we got 10 days, buddy. He's like, all right, you gotta have a blue suit, but it can't be navy blue. I was like, that's a tall order for a guy living in Lander. But I went to Bells and Bows and they had the one guy's suit for sale in Lander. And it just happened to be a non-navy blue.
And
it fit me.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
She could have gotten it for you if you
Yeah.
hadn't either.
Yeah.
She does
Yeah.
a phenomenal job. I can't remember, her name escapes me, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I snagged it, took it to the tailor. Shout out to Mary, who did the adjustments for me. But yeah, so like literally like 6 days before the wedding, I finally had a suit to wear.
Very good.
But yeah, I remember thinking like this was the one suit in Lander that you could buy at a retail shop.
Mhm.
So, everything else you would have had to like piece something together from like a thrift store.
Yeah, no, I have this dream. I don't know if I should say it over here or not. I want to open up a cigar lounge.
Oh,
Cool.
And see, here's
you
the
should
thing.
definitely say that over the air. Yeah.
I want to open up a cigar lounge, open for funding.
Mm.
No, but me and some buddies of mine, we get together every Sunday afternoon or almost every Sunday afternoon, and we'll smoke cigars and sit around and chat. And this, I guess, is one of the, we can go
circle around back a bit and to like, I don't know, or male cultural things, and whether it not this is not a, wouldn't be a rite of passage, but it's a kind of a male cultural thing. But sitting down and smoking a cigar, and like not everybody likes to smoke and or anything else like that. And we have guys come in and sit down and conversation, they don't even smoke, but we got good filtration in there and everything else like that. So,
Sure.
but we sit down, we smoke a cigar, and we just talk, right? Because even right now, like guys don't just, I think women do this, but guys not so much, don't just sit down in a circle and talk.
I know.
We got to do something else on the side. Like, look,
Gotta.
I'm sipping on we're enjoying some whiskey, got a little nice little plate of food here and having a conversation.
You gotta get
Get in on that.
plowing through this.
But yeah, you have it's guys need something to socialize around. And so whether
They need something to bond over.
yeah,
And they'll talk plenty.
but you have to you need a shared experience,
Yeah.
right? And that's huge. And I think, I mean, women probably the same to some extent, but guys, like go do something hard together, right?
Mm.
Go do something fun together, whatever it is. But like, and sharing an experience over, and this is the whole human experience, but sharing an experience over something, because I've gone to some cigar lounges, like, and you sit down next to somebody and you don't know who they are, you don't know what they do, but turns out, oh, maybe they're a judge, they're a lawyer, they're a high up politician or whatever. But that didn't matter. You're just you're having a conversation over a cigar. You're sharing this experience over a cigar, talking about, you know, whatever it is. But it's something to come together around is what I see it, and that's not regulated by ideology or necessarily, or religion or anything else like that. Now, I guess you could have religions that say you shouldn't smoke, but you know, it's kind of set apart from that. We're coming around this.
Oh.
So, I think it'd be a good thing for the community, and I think people would enjoy it. And I love tobacco, cigars.
Yeah. Have you spent much time in New England?
I haven't. So the farthest, I don't think you'd consider, I don't even know that I've been technically, because the farthest
Yeah.
north I've
Yeah,
been on the East Coast was, we'd say, Maryland.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know,
we
where does New England start?
Rhode Island.
Okay, so no.
Connecticut.
I have never been to New England.
Oh man, we got to get you down to the north end of Boston.
Okay, I would like to.
Or to like southern New Hampshire.
Okay,
Some of the cigar lounges around there.
I bet.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, I mean, you know, Boston, you'd blend right in, you know.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I think, yes, some of that culture survives in those parts of the country.
It's kind of coming back though. I've noticed, like,
Okay.
more guys. I've seen it almost. I'll see students smoking all the time, you know, at the Catholic college, and I think I would say, like, culture and gender roles have been pretty well preserved there, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
I'd say so. And I mean,
There's going to be fluctuation, but like, I see it. You can tell a difference. The ladies act a certain way and the men act a certain way. You know, at least to the public eye.
Sure.
So, which is good. But there, yeah, you'll see them smoking. But yeah,
with a cigar lounge, though, you want to create a space where you can come in around a common interest that allows someone who makes X a year to share that interest, and therefore share a conversation and share a certain parity with someone who makes X, right? Like,
sure, we don't have to limit it to fiscal differences. We could, you know, it could be again, political differences. It could
or
be
age differences, or
different
generational. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it could be any number of those things, but what it does, it's a, because whatever you do in a group setting or in a community, in a way, becomes an aspect of its culture. So like that, doing things together as a community, we'll just say, whether, you know, again, I think it's, for guys especially, it's a good thing to come around, but it's a masculine thing to do, is smoke. And like, you know, my wife smokes, and I know a lot of women that smoke, but generally it's considered a masculine thing. But it becomes somewhere, and you don't even have to drink. Like, I'd like to have a small whiskey bar there, but like, you can come and, yeah, it'd be nice to set up a place in such a manner where you could take your wife or girlfriend there and you can leave the establishment without smelling like smoke.
Okay.
Like you have the filtration down, so where people who don't even smoke come in there, and they could be there just maybe it's for the atmosphere, for the conversation, whatever it is. But
Interesting.
set up a place like that where
Mm.
people can come in and meet and have conversations. That doesn't have to necessarily be over alcohol. Because like on my end, from a job perspective, almost everything we go to involves alcohol or drugs.
Mm.
Almost everything. People are usually either drunk or they have been drinking from
Okay.
a law enforcement perspective. Sorry.
Yeah.
So, and not that I think, I mean, liquor, whiskey is good and everything else like that. But, there's definitely a cultural stigma and an outcome, generally speaking, for society as a whole, where it can be quite negative. Whereas you're not worried about, getting high on tobacco, as it were, and having issues. So,
Right.
well,
for
it's a conversation stimulant, not a
what was
a
the term
violence
that they gave?
stimulant.
Social lubricant. That was it.
It's a social lubricant. Yeah. It's a social lubricant that doesn't impair you.
Yeah.
So kind of like caffeine, but
Yeah. So have you thought about a name for this place?
yes.
All right. What
I don't
the
should
Green
I don't-
Dragon? Can you share it, or is this?
I
is
might
this-
I've trademarked this.
You've trademarked.
Oh goodness. No, so biblical reference. My buddy of mine that I've been smoking with for a long time. His name is also Jonathan. And
Okay.
so it was Sons of Thunder Tobacco.
Sons
So SOT. So that's the you got the biblical reference there, obviously. But which is also an opportunity. Like, well, why is it called this? And you can have a conversation.
Mm.
So, yeah.
That's a great name.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I ever start a motorcycle gang, I'm probably going to name it the same.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a pretty great name.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of growing the beard for it.
Very good.
Yeah.
Got the hat going on, everything else
Yeah.
like that, and wearing some plaid.
All right,
mean-
Sons of Thunder Tobacco. Yeah.
If you did, could you imagine like you grow up to a house that you're gonna, introduce a client to, and you roll up on a motorcycle and
Right.
they'd be like, "This is different."
This guy's for real.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Hey, for the right client, right? I mean, if it's that kind of client, then maybe they'd like to.
You will immediately either they will be like, I'm going to stick with this guy, or immediately they'll be like, find me a different realtor.
Yeah. I mean, if you know the guy a little bit, and he rides also, then heck yeah, borrow your
Right.
bike, and then you can got some rapport there.
Dude, I'm a fan. Sons of Thunder Tobacco. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great? Like on a Thursday afternoon. It's not quite the weekend, but you can just be like, dude, I gotta wine. Meet me at Suns. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. Meet me at Suns.
Yeah.
Gotta happen now. We gotta make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think it'd be a good thing.
Right.
So
But speaking of Wooten's Enterprises, you've started a little venture here in the last year.
yeah. So we're
you're doing self-defense and firearms.
yeah, we survived our first year actually on one class. No. So the company is officially a year old not too long ago. Jake Halsmer, who work at the police department together. We also run the firearms program there, but we started a training group, Pelican Group. And so
Pelican Group,
there's also there's a Christ representation in that. And I'm sure you're familiar with our logo is actually from a stained glass window in a church.
Ooh.
I actually need to look up where it's from. I remember when I pulled it off, I read about it, but
Okay.
the pelican will, if it can't feed its young, my understanding is it'll actually feed its young with its own blood to keep them alive. So
Whoa.
that's the reason for that. It's kind of a strange name if I'm being, completely honest, Pelican Group. So, but
Right, this coastal bird,
coastal bird in Wyoming.
You're
What do you
right,
do?
right. What's going on? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's for ideological reasons we chose that.
Okay.
But so in the pelican, given its sacrificing of itself, giving that blood, that you can have that you go into the Christ representation there and everything else like that, but also from a self-defense perspective, which is what we're solely focused on firearms right now, and
Okay.
we go into some mindset and talk about some other stuff, but
you know, you might be required to give some blood,
Mhm.
you know, potentially, or your life, because that's what, or even, you know, potentially take somebody else's, but you know, so it's a heavy matter. The current course, the one we taught last year was a concealed carry permit.
Okay.
In Wyoming, you need to have some sort of firearms training. Your hunter safety can fulfill that requirement if you all hunt, but this is a class geared to concealed carry. Now we pared it down, super consolidated the information to an 8-hour course. And
Okay.
now, is that nearly enough? Absolutely not.
Mm.
The goal of the course is, one, to check the box for the state requirement to get a concealed carry permit, which allows you to carry concealed across state lines in different other states.
Mm,
See,
okay.
you better check to see what states reciprocate and say that's a good
So
enough.
you're looking for that reciprocity with
Exactly.
with
And
other
that's, you got to look into that
neighbors.
yourself. I couldn't name off the top of my head, but that's what that does in Wyoming. If you're a citizen here in Wyoming, you can carry concealed without a permit.
Hmm.
And, which is, I think, is a good thing. I'm saying that from a law enforcement perspective as well. But so that's meant to check that box. But a big thing is we kind of go through some of the law surrounding it, because like a lot of people have grown up carrying guns,
Okay.
but here, and they know how to use them, but how do you know when you're allowed to use it?
Okay.
How do you, under what circumstances you want to use it? Like, that's kind of a big deal, right? You're carrying something that could take somebody's life. You might want to know if you can use it
Mm-hmm.
and under what circumstances. So we spend about 4 hours of classroom time, which is half the course, right?
Yeah.
We go into that, we go into some equipment stuff and everything else like that, and, you know, basic breakdown of firearms and everything and whatnot. But I'd say probably about 2 hours, hour and a half, let's say an hour and a half. We're just kind of looking at or we're looking at statute, and we're not lawyers or anything else like that. We make it clear, but like, I think a law, if it's well written, is understandable by the common man. And so
Mm.
we just kind of break into it and be like, okay, this is what it says.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to get more detail and nitty gritty, if you don't feel like you understand what it says, you can talk to a lawyer and everything else like that. But it gives you a framework and an idea, and kind of an idea is like, hey, if this is what this says under these circumstances, I can use it. And we kind of try to show people or impress upon people the weight of carrying a weapon like this. I think
Mhm.
people should do it.
Mm-hmm.
You should do it, but you also have to be okay with doing it. Don't carry it unless you're kind of committed to the idea. Like, there's talk about why people carry. There's Travis Haley, who's a firearms trainer out of Arizona now, but he says one reason that he carries is to uphold a higher standard of care for society.
Mm-hmm.
You're taking a burden on yourself, whether you realize it or not. You're potentially liability. You'd be thrown in jail if you know, and everything else like that. And that's just one aspect of it. Like, you can go into, like, there's other ways to have a higher standard of care for society, but defending someone's life, I would argue, is probably, you know, it's pretty big.
Yeah.
Big up
Yeah.
there.
Massive.
But so that's the course is to fill that requirement. We do 4 hours of range time, kind of just getting a little bit of firearms handling in, and it doesn't make you proficient or anything else like that. But like, even somebody who is proficient with the firearm would benefit from coming to the class,
Sure.
which is neat. So you can kind of do both, but you're not going to come away if you have no experience being like really good with the gun and feeling comfortable with it. You need to get additional
Can't
training.
quite turn someone into a gunfighter in 4 hours.
Yeah, but there's the goal of the class, if I'm being honest, is to get you to go to another one
Okay.
to get more training, which we'll have those classes available later this year for actual proficiency
Sure.
of a handgun,
Mhm.
proficiency of a rifle, and everything else like that. But that 8-hour course is to, because if you make it too long, people aren't going to come to it, because
Mhm.
people are busy.
Sure.
I got to take off work to even teach the class. So
Yeah.
like doing a one day 8-hour block
Mhm.
was like, okay, I think we're going to get the most people in here. Does
Yeah.
it make people proficient? Is it enough? Absolutely not. But
Mm.
it at least hopefully gets more people in the door.
It's the first. Yeah. It's the first step on the journey.
Yeah.
How do you, so thinking about those future courses that you want to offer, how can you prepare someone for the adrenaline dump that happens when you're in those critical situations?
So, everybody's heard the term, muscle memory and everything else like that. But like the stress inoculation can be part of it. I think you do some training like this. When we came, we were teaching it or had a brief Q&A at your
jujitsu.
Yeah, at the
self-defense class.
women's self-defense class that we're doing up in Riverton.
Yeah.
So
And so some of it is in what you did. You did scenarios.
Yeah.
You put people under stress. And now it's not the same as real stress, but it is real stress.
Mhm.
It's probably not going to be the same thing, but there's a level of stress inoculation you can do. And there's also a level of muscle memory or repeating a task so much that it becomes brain furniture is how I like to say it. Like
Okay.
I'm not thinking about this process.
I like that phrase.
Yeah, if I draw my gun, I don't have to think about any of that. In fact, I don't even really have to think about I draw, present to the target, sight alignment, everything else like that. I know the mechanics and what I need to do. I don't have to, I've done them so much, I don't have to think about them. I know how to execute them without thinking about them. So it frees up real estate. Frees up real estate in your brain to actually
Yeah,
think about other
yeah.
things as much as you can anyway.
Sure.
Right. Because like I've had situations, even the job, like I'm formally trained and everything else like that, but you can't be too ready for a situation. You still have situations where you lose under stress. You do lose a good part of your ability to think critically.
Sure. You lose some of that cognitive
Yeah. So
cognitive function.
I can't be thinking about how to pull my gun out or how to grab somebody, put them to the ground, how to handcuff, how to draw my taser and whatever, and shout a command and everything else like that. That's why you do these things in training. And so by doing that and becoming well trained with the implement that you're using, whether it's a firearm, whether it's pepper spray, whether it's your body, right?
Yep.
You allow yourself more of an ability to think about something else.
Okay.
So
All right. So when you say
Mm.
you want to
Mm.
put brain furniture in people's minds, so to speak, you're just trying to say, I'm going to give you a certain baseline of skills so that the limited brain space, the limited bandwidth that you're going to have in those high stress critical situations can be dedicated to the actual specifics of the problem.
Mhm. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the idea. Because like again, you can only focus on it for stress regardless.
Mm.
Whether stress is introduced or not, you can only focus really on one thing at a time. Like they've
Mhm.
done studies on this. Multitasking is not really a thing. You're really just switching tasks quickly. Right? So
Quickly and perhaps poorly. Yeah.
exactly. But like I cannot be focused on the rudimentary aspects of the job. That's why I'll go back to the job, when I do a traffic stop, 90% of my interactions with people are the same.
Mm-hmm.
I say the same thing. I ask the same questions and whatnot. And then that way, cause like I just say that, cause when I'm saying that, I'm not figuring out what I want to say when I talk to them. I'm looking at their hands, seeing what's in the vehicle, making sure I'm safe.
Mm-hmm.
So I go up there and automatically spit out, the reason for the stop and how's your day going otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. So, the tasks especially for in high stress stuff, anything you can do, so your mind doesn't have to think about that. And that's done as humans, it's done by repetition, right?
Mhm.
So now that can also be a double-edged sword. You can repeat things incorrectly, which is why people should get training from people that have already messed it up, and professionals. It's like, I'm not gonna try to teach myself jujitsu or how to ground fight. I can learn way faster by somebody who's already gone through that.
Right. You can
process and knows
outsource
the
it.
tips. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like in that just streamlines the learning process. That's why you go to teachers, right? They know the material, they know how to regurgitate it. Hopefully they're a good teacher and everything else like that. And they present the information in a manner that's more easy to absorb, and they have
Right,
experience
So
to
yeah,
bear with it.
Right. You sort of hijack's not quite the
Mm.
right word, maybe co-op. You co-op someone else's experience, right?
Yeah,
You-
yeah. It's
you
like why you read a
learn-
book too. It's
Yeah.
like their experience is condensed into this thing,
Yeah.
and I can learn from that, and I don't have to live their whole life to get it.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
It is. It's really cool. That's why I think history is important.
Yeah,
Right?
Very important.
Yeah. Ooh, ooh. Yeah. What's your, I mean, so, just thinking about the offerings from Pelican Group, I mean, are you guys going to probably focus mostly on handguns or are you going to look to get into rifle and semi-automatic rifle applications?
Yeah, definitely. Going to the whole Second Amendment thing, that could be a podcast of its own.
All right, get him. Let's get him on the calendar
No.
for James Wooten returns.
Yeah. Sounds like a plan.
Let's see. Nobody might. We'll see. Hopefully people find this interesting. But no, definitely. So like the rifle is important. I mean, you can
I would argue potentially more important. The only reason we carry a handgun and people carry handguns or even on duty is because a rifle's big and clumsy, right? A handgun is significantly less ideal to shoot with than a rifle. It's a
Okay.
lot harder to. I can hand somebody a
Just
rifle.
for the sake of our audience, can you break that down a little bit? Is it because you have a second hand on it? Is it because the butt's in your shoulder? Like
Sure, yeah,
why?
points of contact. We'll just say that. So at
Okay.
points of contact, and on a pistol, I got 2 points of contact on the pistol. Both my hands are extended out in front of me.
Mhm.
My only support is my arms out in front of me. This isn't very stable. Like you
Okay.
can probably see your hands shaking, just holding it out in front of you,
Yeah.
right? Not very stable. You know, with a rifle, you got 2 points of contact on the rifle. I got one that's actually a little bit closer to me in order to shoot, and then you got the stock that you can brace it against. So you got 3 points of contact with your rifle. Ideally, you can shoot it with 2, but anyway.
Sure.
So it's a lot. Say I can teach somebody to shoot a rifle accurately, significantly faster than I can a pistol because because of that. A
Okay.
lot more stable. It's more of a natural thing. There's so many other little details that go into shooting a pistol. Like, you can move a slight bit and it throws your shot off completely.
Okay.
But it's also the capacity to do damage is significantly less just because of the velocities on the ammunition, obviously, or on the projectiles significantly less because the case size is less, everything else like that.
Okay.
You know, so-
And also just a function of the barrel length, you
Yep,
know,
that's-
the explosion of the ammunition has less time to act on that bullet before it exits the muzzle, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, a bunch of different things, but that's the only reason we carry one. If I get a call
Mm.
that involves a weapon,
Mhm.
whether it's a knife, whether it's another firearm or whatnot, guess what I'm grabbing? I'm grabbing the rifle out of my truck, right?
Okay.
Because I don't want to be in a position. I want to be able to. I want to have the best tool for the job if I have it. The pistol I always have on me. It's less ideal. It's convenient.
Mhm.
But if I could carry a rifle in a pistol package somehow magically, then I would. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's
Right,
way
right.
easier to shoot, right? So definitely want to be doing the rifle. The rifle is what wars are fought with, and how our country was ultimately founded was with things like that. So we want to get into a lot of that. I think I think that should be just a common skill set. Like you talk to most people, like, do they even know how to shoot this thing? The AR-15 is it's the most common firearm in the United States.
Okay.
I think, or at least rifle. I don't want to know if a firearm overall. You could say maybe handguns as a whole because there's more models of them are more prevalent. But
Right. You count every brand of handgun as a different type, whereas an AR is made by 1,000 different brands, but is all to a certain
it's
level
all
of spec.
basically the same. Yeah. So, but so it's in common use. There's something to be said for that. Just like the musket was in common use during the Revolutionary War. So you start asking these questions about, okay, if what did the Minuteman loadout look like? A good book to read is Paul Revere. Oh, I can't remember the author's name. I want to say it's just I'll show it to you. I've got it on Audible. I've been listening to, but they go into they're talking about the kind of the lead up to the Revolutionary War, and the book's not just about Paul Revere. It talks about context and everything else like that. And one aspect I thought was interesting is like each individual town had their own militia, and they trained once a week for X amount of hours on Sunday every week. And as a male of a certain age, you were expected to be part of it. And so they would drill and do these things. And you look out what each individual carried, it was a musket, it was a rations for 3 days, it was a canteen, it was a belt with certain equipment on it, like bedroll, you had a certain amount of ammunition and everything else like that. And you start to and that's basically what the British were carrying as well for their individuals. If you think about, okay, so between these semi-professional and professional militaries, this is what they were carrying, right? And you start saying, okay, what's the equivalent of that today? It's quite more extensive.
Yeah.
But the idea that a regular citizen doesn't have the military equipment is absolutely absurd. Historically, that's the way it's always been.
Okay.
Until relatively recently, I would argue. But
okay, so a peasant farmer in Lexington in 17 70
Mhm.
would have had, call it 80 to 90% of the equipment that a regularly armed British soldier
Sure,
would have had
yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah.
And today, no way. I mean,
That's pretty close.
you're lucky if you have 25% of the equipment.
No, absolutely. And there's a pretty large barrier to entry. Like if you start adding all the things, you start talking night vision, you start talking optics, you start talking armor,
Right.
right? And I think these are all things that people should own. Like
Mhm.
these are good things to own. Now, um, there's different levels of price entry and everything else like that. But that all that to say that, with all this equipment, we would like to eventually get into a point where we're training people how to use everything like that. I've got
Okay.
between the military background and then the Jake and I both being in law enforcement, there's a little bit of equipment carryover, quite a bit of equipment carryover, I would say, for the on an individual level between that. So getting into some of that would be definitely be a goal of ours, but this should be normal.
Mhm.
I'd say it's a relatively recent movement. I'd say within the last decade of kind of normalizing that for the average person. It used to be, especially from guys that got out of the military, they'd be like, "What are you doing? You don't need that stuff." It's like you need it. Well, what we talk about need, like for preservation, just like the preservation of a nation,
Mm.
it's required to have a a standing military and an armed military. I would argue that for the preservation of freedom in your culture
Mm.
as well, the same should be expected of the citizenry on some level. Now, you're not a professional military, but you can be trained very well. And this whole idea that the Revolutionary War happened overnight is also ridiculous too. Like
Yeah.
these people had these skills and they had this self-sustainment, this capacity to do the things they did before, way well beforehand. It was kind of like a way of life before they actually had to do what they did. So, and
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll have to have Father James confirm this in terms of historical accuracy, but I think it's fair to say that everyone would have either been or known someone with campaign
yeah,
experience.
yeah, no, I've heard that.
Right.
Mm.
If maybe you were a 16-year-old kid
Yeah.
who had never actually been in combat, but a father or an uncle had been in the French and Indian War, perhaps,
Mhm.
right? So you would have at least known someone
Yeah.
who had been on campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a French and Indian War was that the most recent one for
That
the
was the precursor,
to
I
the
believe, if I understand correctly.
that's,
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. I mean, that's where that's certainly where Washington got much of his officer experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, but that's a great book. I'll get you I can get you the author and everything else like that. But I actually haven't even finished it. But I'm not even halfway into it, I don't think, and it's just loaded with great information. So
Tom, do we have a
Yeah.
way of putting, stuff that comes up in the cast like this? Do we have a way of putting it in like a description or like a resources column for people, books that we
Yeah.
mention or what have you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Put that on.
Gotcha. So if I'm kind of tracking you correctly, I mean, you're talking about a level of proficiency and a proficiency that's widespread in the way, like, again, I'm going to say like a high school diploma, right? You graduate high school in your ideal society. You know how to do under stress reload of both an AR and a pistol.
Sure. And like again, is the idea that these are regular. So many people. It's again the amount of people that own this weapon. It's normal to own this. Like the idea that it's not is ridiculous. But yeah, that being able to marksmanship and just you can have basic fundamentals. I mean, I'd like a level of training higher than that. But it also, especially for guys, that if you start doing like application stuff where you're working in the field and whatnot, and this is not comfortable stuff to go do. It's not fun to throw, you know, 30 pounds of equipment on, plus a rifle, maybe a pack that weighs 50 pounds on top of that on, and patrol or run around for a few hours, like, or however you want to put it. That's not comfortable things, or it's not comfortable to sleep outside for 3 days a week. Now, I'm not saying necessarily that you have to do those things to that extent, right? But I mean, but these are bringing it back around to, like, for the rite of passage of the becoming a man or manhood, or in culture, and men bonding over things. I think that
Mm.
it'd be definitely very good culturally. I think, but these are all things that I think most guys would like to do, right?
Yeah, it's like if you there's I don't know if you listen to Jordan Peterson,
Oh
man.
yeah, yep.
He talks about the idea of adventure a lot, and he says that like any like young boy right now or like young man who's just feels like life is pretty boring, there's not much to do.
Mm.
If you gave him the opportunity to go on like this wild mission,
Mm.
they probably would take you up on it 100%. It's kind of like the idea of the Hobbit.
Oh yeah,
It's
yeah.
like the someone who had no idea of anything outside of
Mhm.
like an easy life, but it's so thrilling to think about that he wants to go.
Mm.
And he's willing to leave everything he ever grew up with, all of his family, his friends, everything, to go on this adventure and to see what it's like.
Yeah.
And he was like, there's if we were able to do that more often, I think he said he think that would help a lot of the men's psyche actually.
Mhm.
Because
You need hard things to do, guys.
Yeah.
That's the. I mean, don't get me wrong. I grew up playing video games, right?
see.
What was your favorite?
Halo 2 and Super Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
Now that's how you really date
Yeah.
yourself.
I like those two.
Super Smash Brothers Melee, we'll say. But
Yeah.
anyway, and there was definitely a bonding that comes over that. You get together with the guys and you're competing, but that was the competition aspect. Like you need to come over and do a LAN party and everything.
Yeah.
It's like you don't have to do that anymore. It's all through the internet, which I think loses some of it. But and that's fine.
Hmm.
But you have to go do an experience hardship. Like that wasn't hard to do any of those things. Like you're not gonna, I'm not doing something hard really by, getting together and doing that. I mean, there's valuable things to that, but like just the sedentariness of society, people not willing to go and do hard things, and people they would be much happier to do hard things. I
Yeah.
think, be regular at the gym, do things that, whatever it is. There's definitely something to that, what you were
That
saying.
pain inoculation.
Yeah.
Well, you just
Mm.
think about the stress that you have when something happens to you for the first time
Mhm.
versus happens to you just for the second time, right? Like second time, for me, probably my best example is jujitsu, right? I mean, I remember uh, I'm going to call them panic attacks that I had to
Really?
kind of fight through. Yeah, the first time you've got like a 250-pound guy trying to like on top of your face,
Mhm.
trying to smother you can't breathe, you can't see, you've got, rough material just grinding across your face.
Well, you think about it,
Right.
you're creating normalcy around grabbing another person. I mean, you want to
Right.
do it in the right context, but like I'll even get this in my job, and we arrest people all the time, but it's like if you don't have that regularity and grab and putting hands on another person,
Mm,
there's definitely another stress component on top of that, because so shows socially, obviously it's not acceptable to hurt
yeah.
somebody else. But if you have to do it
Yep.
and you've never done it,
Mm.
good luck.
Well, we tend not to want to get our hips involved. I mean, right. And what I mean is, we tend to want to grab things with our hands and hopefully like, and like pull them somewhere. Where it's like, if you really want to control somebody else, generally speaking, have to glue your hips to them, right? So that you can have some control over their center of gravity. Right. I mean, I remember Jake was telling me, he's like, yeah, dude, toughest thing in law enforcement. A lot of cops try to grab someone, and they reach out with a hand, so they're at the maximum extension
Mhm.
of their physical space. And then they're doing, and then he's like, and then it's the most awkward dance. These two guys just kind of hopping around.
Pull in different directions. Yeah.
Right. Where it's like, yeah, I mean, jujitsu, I will say this, jujitsu will teach you is like, you have to get your core right next to their core.
I heard, do you have I heard there was a story of you overseas utilizing, or you had a conversation, it was involving a machete or something. What was
Oh, the machete. Yeah. In Belize.
Yes.
Oh, dude, I
Can you
was, yeah,
share
yeah, yeah. That, I don't think I deported myself particularly well, but it is the incident in my life that made me think, all right, I have to get into jujitsu.
Oh,
Tom, have I ever told you this?
Mm.
Okay, so all right, so I was in Belize. I was doing a mission year after college, and they decided that this guy who, in Belize, they speak 3 languages: Spanish, Creole, and English. And they decided to make the American 22-year-old who only speaks English. They decided to make him the sports coordinator. So basically all these events that happened at other schools, like I wasn't the coach, but I had to make sure that like we had a bus, we had a place to stay, we had meals, all those logistical things. So anyway, so one of the duties was like, you had to make sure
Was
you
that
had,
uncomfortable?
oh my God,
Did
like
you grow from it?
I don't know if the way I described it to my friends afterward was I feel like I aged 3 years in 6 months.
You aged into manhood.
Yeah, yeah. So we go to this track and field event. And so all these these buses, you just charter them, right? They don't belong to the school or anything. You just hire a bus and a bus driver from a bus company. And all these buses are like they're like from the 90s. Like they bought them from America after they had too many miles on them to be safe by American standards. And now they're just somewhere in Central America being used for public transport. So anyway, so we go down to this track and field event, and I probably had, I'm going to say maybe 40 athletes, 3 teachers, and we're all on this bus. So we were at this track and field event, and all the buses line up next to the field. But all these drivers, are there all day. They don't know any of these kids. They don't have anything to do. So they just either sleep or they go up into the jungle and they drink all day.
Oh,
So, so one of my athletes, who he was on the track and field team, he was not, let's say, carrying the team. So he loses his event pretty early. He goes back to the bus, and these 2 girls from another school came up to him, and they're like, "Oh, hey, we're locked out of our bus, different bus. We're locked out of our bus. We got to get in. Can you help us? Blah, blah, blah." And so this kid goes off to try to help him, which means, 16-year-old kid, his solution is to kick in the window
uh-oh.
of this other bus. So he breaks the window, and then all 3 of them decide that, well, this isn't good. So they all disappear. So meanwhile, I'm on my bus, and the events are wrapping up. Kids are starting to get back on. We're trying to keep them hydrated. Belize, humid, hot. We're trying to keep them hydrated, trying to keep their blood sugar levels up. So I'm chopping fruit. So I'm on this bus, and I'm chopping, I think it was a pineapple. Anyway, so I've got this big kitchen knife, and I'm chopping a pineapple, and all of a sudden I look to the back of the bus, and my friend Danielle, shout out to Danielle Juan down there in Belize. I hope he hears this someday. Anyway, he's framed like in the back door, and God, poor guy. I mean, he's probably 5'7", maybe a $140. He's framed in the back, he's trying to prevent someone from getting on. And it's one of the biggest guys I've ever seen. I mean, at least 250, at least 6'4", and there's just this big guy, and finally he just throws Danielle like into the side of one of the seats. And he pulls himself onto the bus, and he's shouting like, "Who broke my window? Who broke my window?" in Creole, which I don't understand very well. But anyway, I kind of get the sense he's mad. So anyway, so I look at him and he looks at me, and I'm just absentmindedly chopping this pineapple, which in retrospect I could understand as being sort of looking like I was waving a knife at him, because I'm chopping, I'm chopping this pineapple.
Oh no.
So he charges, and I mean, I was 20. Yeah. So I was 22 or 23.
My gosh.
I probably weighed like $155. You know what I mean? So I try to stop him. I try to brace myself, with the seats, and, he just sends me flying. And then he just runs off the other end of the bus, and he's shouting like, "I'm going to kill that kid. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him." And I'm like, oh shit, like one of my students is going to get killed because of this. And at the time, and in that moment, I didn't know it was about a broken window. I just knew someone was very upset. So I'm like, I gotta go save this kid. So I run off the bus thinking I'm going to be the one who stopped, don't speak Creole. Don't know what's going on. Don't know this guy or his name or anything. So anyway, so I run outside, and there's, 5 or 6 other people trying to calm him down. And in Creole, they pronounce it machete. they don't say machete, it's machete. So he starts saying, Mon, where's my machete? Mon, where's my machete? What's he talking about? What's he talking about? Well, I pretty soon found out what he's talking about. He runs over to his bus, pulls out a 3-foot machete, and everyone else scatters. Everybody, I remember that so clearly. Everyone else was like, deuces, just they're gone. And I just standing still, staring at him. And he starts waving in the machete in my face, saying, like, where's this kid? I'm gonna kill him. I want to know who broke my window, or blah, blah, blah. So anyway, so fortunately, there were a couple of cops who, come running over, and they calmed him down. But I remember 2 things from that bus drive back being like, one, like, I am going to get into martial arts because it's, no, I'll be honest. Like, did I run away? No. But did I kind of freeze and not know what to do? Absolutely. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I had this great stress response. So I remember thinking, I got to get into martial arts. The other thing I was thinking was, what the hell is going on in Belize? Because Danielle comes over to me after this whole incident happens, and he's like, Jonathan, how much money do we have, like, in the school budget for the kids' dinner on the way home? And I'm like, about $300 Belize. And he's like, we're gonna have to pay off this bus driver. I was like, the hell we are. He almost
waved a machete.
Yeah, he almost
face.
killed me, He's like, nope, I'm serious. Like, if we have to go to the police station with all, we're going to have 40 kids. We're going to be there all night. It's not going to get resolved. And it's going to be a total disaster. He's like, just pay the guy off and let's get the hell out of here. So the man who threatened my life, I had to, like,
Dish out.
dish out the cash. 300 Belize. It's like, God, you got to be kidding me.
Man.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I know. It was wild. So, I think I went to my first jiu-jitsu. So I had to finish out the year there in Belize. So that was a few more months. But I think I was at my first.
Would you watch Bruce Lee movies or something like that to maybe, get some idea of what to do?
I was at my first jiu-jitsu class probably like 6-8 months later.
Okay.
Once I was back at home, had a new, settled in a new job, new city. And I found a jiu-jitsu place. And I was taking lessons pretty soon after that. So
Very good.
oh my God.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, your body is the one thing you'll always have with you, right? At least
Right,
until you
yeah.
die. So it's
Yeah.
learning that skill is
Oh,
definitely a
yeah.
good thing.
Yeah. It was just it was sort of that proof that everyone needs that, these critical incidents can happen
Yeah.
whenever, and for whatever reason.
Yeah. And who's like who's the best, best person to have there?
Right.
It didn't really matter. The question doesn't really matter. Really, the best person to handle it's going to be the person that is there.
Right.
And so you need to think about, okay, could you have the capacity to handle these things? So like, 'cause
Mm.
if a school shooting happens, by the time we show up, it's too late. We've already done the damage, So,
That's a pretty heavy fact, isn't it? Yeah.
very. And so like the idea behind that is back to the higher standard of care for society or for your community. Is you having the capability to care for your community and whatever the regard is. I'm not saying everybody's got to go become, firearm whiz bang and be trained and everything else like that, but the idea of like ownership for the community, I think is a good thing, and a communication in the community is a good thing, right? That's benefit of this whole cigar thing, but to promote communication. But yeah, that's really a goal of the, I guess say one of the primary goals of the company is to enable people to care for themselves.
Okay.
We'll see how bad my Latin is. It's parate ipsum, which is translated. That's a slogan for the company, which is translated "prepare yourself," essentially.
Oh yeah.
And so that's what we're looking to do. We are trying to impart capacity and things learned.
Okay.
Basically consolidate information. Same thing as like reading a book or just learning from a teacher. We're trying to consolidate information from our experience and things that we've pulled from other people, because we're not definitely not the end all be all, but like I think there's definitely there is a lack of that, at least here in the community. And then even to some extent in the law enforcement realm, because we're going to be getting into other things also, like a good thing that people should know how to use lights. Like think about like we
yeah.
talked about that in
At the women's self-defense class, yeah.
self-defense classes. A firearm is not obviously all the problem solver, because some situations don't require deadly force, right? So giving yourself options, like a flashlight's a great tool to use, whether it's identifying things. You can use it as a deterrent and and it's just a good utility to have. But you can think about that, and whether it's on a weapon or not. But ideally you have one that's not to use as you don't want to use a weapon on a light on a weapon for a utility item, but have a separate light on you.
Where are my keys? And you're
Exactly.
You're right.
Yeah, but
around in your jacket with your Glock.
yeah, exactly. So, but layering your capacity. So, like, I like carrying medical on me as well. Like, how often do you're probably more likely to come across a car accident or somebody that needs, some sort of trauma management than you are to, shoot somebody. But even if you
Okay.
do, that being said, even if you do have to shoot somebody, people might, we were taught this in the military, but usually if you did, that then if they're still alive afterwards, you're required to render aid. And so we can go down a rabbit hole on that too, but like anyway, but if you do that, that's not gonna as long as the threat has been stopped, because that's really the goal when you deploy your firearm. It's not necessarily to kill them. If you can stop them from doing what they're doing without killing them, then hey, good on you. But sometimes the best and quickest way to end it is to kill them, right? So, and but if they're not dead and you're able to render aid after that, or render aid to somebody that they shot or did the thing to, is a good thing as well. But laying your capabilities, and also options for self-defense, pepper spray. We talked on tasers and stuff like that. I don't necessarily recommend them for various reasons, but like, just having options available. So if you're physically skilled with your body, you can move around people, you're good at jujitsu, whatever it is, you have a light to identify threats. You have pepper spray if if somebody's bigger than you are, to give you an option to get away. Then you have a firearm if they're bringing deadly force to bear, or you're in a situation where that could be justified. So layering your capacity to defend yourself is always a good thing. I always have a handful of tools on me. That's why we have a belt of tools. Like, we got our Batman belt with us. We have the ability. I almost never, if somebody's being combative, they're getting something from some sort of other tool utilized on them, whether it's pepper spray, taser, whatever it is, before I lay hands on them.
Okay. Right? You're not looking to brawl off the bat.
Because one, I don't do it enough, as you know, like I've done a number of trainings with you, but nothing near what I would consider proficient. And we get minimal training on that, but anything you can do to stack the situation in your favor is good. Even if I was trained, I would do the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, you have to, and so I've been doing jiu-jitsu for over a decade now. And man, it is true. You do learn that, skill can overcome weight and strength, but damn, if weight and strength aren't nice to have, and if the other guy has them, it's nice to have some alternatives before you come to grips with them.
You don't know who you're grabbing. You never know who you're grabbing. So that's the other side of that coin too. And it's like, well, why do you just do that? It's like, look, I'm not fighting fair. If I have the legal articulation to do something to keep for everybody's safety, I'm going to do it. You know, so like I don't. There's a I'll leave it at that.
Reminds me of I had growing up, or my next door neighbor was a Korean War Marine. His name was Mr. Sanders. And he actually, his uncle was like 2 years away from him in age. And he's an uncle, were like best friends. His uncle joined the Marines for the Korean War when he was 18. Mr. Sanders, Bob Sanders, was like, well, you can't leave me. So he actually lied about his age and joined. He was 16.
Excellent.
And so he serves, and he told me a lot about his unit and what he did. But he said that was back then they were taught judo.
Okay.
And he was telling
Judo's
me,
useful because you stay on your feet.
So your feet throws and,
Yeah.
yeah, I was asking like, well, if an intruder would come in into your house, like, would you just use your judo now? It's like, no, said I want to use something much more efficient.
Yeah.
Like a baseball bat or something. He was like,
tools are good. Tools are a
Yeah.
huge advantage.
hmm
There's a guy down at the academy, and he was an instructor. Now he's on the admin side, but um, Justin Smith, he's competed in worlds in judo. Just a
Mm.
bear of a guy, but he's got some stories about wrestling, like these big Russians and everything else like that in judo and just but he's a guy you just look and was like, dude, I'm not coming near you.
Yeah.
Like there's I've had to arrest a couple people like that. He's like, dude, you're so large, like you're gonna get thoroughly tased and sprayed before, unless you're doing
Right, right.
exactly what I tell you.
Right,
It's
right,
like-
exactly. Right. Sorry, man. I'm really sorry. Yeah.
yeah.
I'd like to apologize in advance for this, but I'm tasing you ahead of time. Yeah.
Unless you get on the ground and do what I
Right.
tell
You
you.
do exactly right. You do exactly what I tell you, or life's gonna be unpleasant. What's the so you guys are working on your website.
Correct.
Okay. So for those interested, when can they expect like be able to see schedules and course offerings, that sort of thing?
Oh, hopefully soon. I think you can email us Pelican. Oh, I think it's Pelican Group Training at Gmail. Let me just check my business card real quick to make sure. I won't tell people.
We'll put it in the description.
Yeah, Pelican Group Training at gmail.com. We haven't transferred over to Proton Mail yet. And then the website will be pelicangroup.co. So that'll hopefully have all the course offerings. I think this year we're looking at introducing at least 2 new courses. I think we're going to continue doing our concealed carry pistol, which I think is a
Fantastic.
big community need.
Mhm.
And then to follow on with that, we're going to have a pistol class more oriented toward manipulation and employment.
Yeah.
Hopefully here very soon, and then a low light portion as well.
Dang.
That'll be a specific class because almost, I think it's like something like 80%. I don't have the stats in front of me, but like almost all these incidents, whether it's shooting or assaults, occur in times of low light.
Mhm.
So it's
Oh.
probably a good idea that you know how to utilize the light, whether it's, we'll cover handheld, weapon mounted as well. You should probably be able to do that because if you're going to employ your weapon, utilize deadly force, you better be able to see what it is you're doing it on, right?
You're right. You're throwing lead at.
Exactly. So that's a big one. Even in the professional line for law enforcement, it's a big training gap that I see. So, and then of course we were talking about rifle as well. We would like to get the rifle off the ground this year as well, but we're talking 3 new courses in a year. So we'll see. The goal is to do the concealed carry at least twice, and then and we'll go from there. Got to gauge the community, what the community needs and whatnot. I think we usually cap it at about 10, just so we can keep an eye on everybody, and then you're actually getting instruction, because you don't want to show up to a class and then they're just paying attention to like a handful of students, right? So
I've been to classes like that, unfortunately. Yeah.
Like, it was like, well, why am I here? Like you're the only benefit you get is when they kind of bring everybody around, they start, talking about stuff. It's like, come on, just tell me something.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that we're trying to preserve that. So keep the class size relatively small.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the short-term goals for the year. So
Yeah. Wow. We're excited to watch it. Yeah.
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 definitely.
We're really, just having you and Jake come up and talk to the ladies at the women's self-defense class last week was really, I thought was a great jumping off point for a lot of them, because, I think it is true that in many ways, the assertiveness that's required for self-defense has not been made available, especially to women in many ways. And so for you guys to be offering these things to the entire community, I think is really a hopeful sign.
yeah, no, it's good. And I like what you guys are doing is great too, because that's the again, because you always have yourself on you, right? You are you're with yourself wherever you go. So
Unfortunately, sometimes.
Yeah. but having, like it's like that level, like what you guys are teaching, that's very important. That's not something we're expertise in, or like that we kind of are rehearsed in. So like we're not offering that, right? I'm glad you guys are offering that as a solution to the community, but it's all the different classes. It's perspective. I need to get in. I'll do a more a regimented class with you. I think it'd be interesting because like there's a different perspective offered when you just have your hands,
Right,
or
right.
your
You
body,
have your hands and the clothes on you. Yeah.
you have no tools. So we preach tools, obviously, and they're good to have and everything else like that. But again, maybe you don't have them.
I like that. Yeah, we preach tools, and let's be honest. You want to drive a nail in, it's nice to have a hammer. Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't always. So
Sure.
that basic level of being able to handle yourself as a person is an important thing. So it's good you all are spearheading that.
Love it. Well, James, it's great to have you on.
Pleasure.
And we could be here all night if work schedules allowed, but I'm sure guys have duties in the morning.
I'm flattered. I appreciate you guys thinking of me.
Yeah, no, it was a ton of fun. Let's do this again. Maybe the next here's to having the next one at the Sons of Thunder Lounge.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That'll be a podcast to remember. The first time we're casting from Sons of Thunder. Yeah. Wherever that may be. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So good to have you on, man. Yeah, we'll get you guys and Pelican Group, linked up on the description and everything. And so people can get more of what you're offering. And I think it'll be a good benefit to all.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate it. Thanks for reaching out.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, man.